Welcome to ClueCon Weekly. Join us every Wednesday to learn about the latest cutting-edge developments in the real-time communications industry. ClueCon Weekly is brought to you by FreeSwitch Solutions. Get support and professional services directly from the creators of the FreeSwitch open source project, solving your issues in the most efficient, stable, and scalable way possible. Get the FreeSwitch advantage. Visit freeswitch.com. Also brought to you by ClueCon, the premier technology conference for developers by developers. Join us every summer in Chicago. ClueCon kicks off on Monday with our annual hackathon, The Coder Games, followed by 3 days of technology-rich presentations discussing telecom, WebRTC, and IoT from developers around the world. To learn more, visit ClueCon.com or call 877-74-CLUE.
And welcome back to another edition of ClueCon Weekly. Today is July 4th. Happy Independence Day to all you viewers out there. Our guest today is Gavin Henry from SureVoIP. And before we get to our guest and our interviewer, Mike Mavroudis here, let's review some of the news and announcements. So as always, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and post them into the YouTube, HIP chat, or the IRC channels, and we'll try to answer your questions at the end of the call. But now that I think about it, this is actually a pre-recording, so there will not be any live questions taking place this week. Stand by for next week. You can definitely follow up there. All right, and so we are getting close. Only about 20 days here until ClueCon, so come join us July 23rd to July 26th in Chicago, and you can register now at ClueCon.com. We have some really great activities planned for the week. First, check out our Coder Games page there on ClueCon.com, and we would love to have you come and join us for Coder Games on Monday at ClueCon. We have 4 great games at all levels of participation. We have something for everyone, from the extreme technical to people just starting out, from those who are not technical at all to those who are quite experts. And for those that don't code, last year we had other type games too, ingenuity, build the contraptions to accomplish certain goal type games. So it's not necessarily just code. Something for everyone. And then don't miss the fun, food, and festivities featured by FlowRoute and FreeSwitch on Monday night. That is Monday night of the conference. And then next for Tuesday, we will have our Gigabit reception. After a day of speakers and presentations, we carve out some time for networking and fun. The Gigabit reception is a way to meet your peers and get to know industry heads in a relaxed and fun atmosphere. And we are excited to have James Bodie back this year with his infamous Dangerous Demos. That will take place Wednesday afternoon at ClueCon. You can sign up by emailing Sharon at freeswitch.com. And we will also have the Signal Wire Bowling and Billiards Bash. That takes place Wednesday evening. You can come for snacks, booze, and great conversation. The party will take place at Lucky Strike. It's just a short walk from the hotel, and it features complimentary beer, wine, sodas, appetizers, bowling, ping pong, and pool tables. So come hang out with us and get your networking on. And lastly, our Sunset Boat Tour is sponsored by VoiceTel. Last year we had a wonderful debut tour up and down the river, and we went out onto the lake, circled around the lighthouse out there, and got a great view, panoramic view of the city. That takes place Thursday night, so be sure to RSVP for this and other events when you register. Be sure to check out the newsletter in the upcoming weeks, and we will be announcing the first wave of ClueCon speakers next week. And if you have any suggestions for future episodes you would like to see, please email us at marketing@cluecon.com, and we will continue to add instructional videos periodically, so make sure you check back in regularly for updates. And as usual, be sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, subscribe on our YouTube channel, and sign up on the mailing list for these and other great news and announcements. All right, let's bring in our interview here, Mike Mavroudis. Mike, how you doing today?
Wonderful. Happy Independence Day.
Happy indeed.
Today we have a question from a community member, and the question is for you. um,
Excellent.
they ask, why doesn't Verto automatically ring when I call my registered extension of user/1000? So
Oh,
Josh, why doesn't that happen?
well, that could be because you need to get basically put in a ring group type dial string into your directory. I actually happen to have an example here where basically if you go into the directory, go to the default.xml file in your directory, you will find that there is a dial string there, in which case that dial string puts together a sort of ring group. Separated by comma here, you see we've got a Verto contact and a Sophia contact. And so as long as the Sophia contact dial string, your Verto contact dial string are placed inside your directory, defined by your dial string there, and then you should be able to register not only a Sophia endpoint to user 1000, you should also be able to register a Verto endpoint to user 1000. And so when you call user 1000 from a third phone, you should actually see both of those endpoints ring. And so that's sounds like that's probably what's going on with the individual there. So you just got to double check your dial string, ensure that you've got a ring group in there to put together it's often what's called presence. That's kind of like setting up a presence where multiple endpoints can register to the same extension and then ring all the endpoints. And that takes place via that comma, ring group.
That's a great dial string. It really is, and so it takes care of a lot of different things. What are some of the other things that are going on there? Like, what do the carrots do?
Oh, let's see here. Yeah, we could definitely run into that. So basically, what that would be a self delimiter. You can see, a lot of times when you're dealing with the larger dial strings, or the first we notice, okay, so we got the open curly brace, close curly brace, right? So that would make these actual channel variables. We're setting up a channel variable, SIP invite domain equals something, and presence ID equals something. These are two channel variables that get placed on both of these channels as they get sent out. And so essentially, when you get larger, multiple dial strings with lots of different parts and pieces in it, sometimes what can happen is you can get tripped up on syntax. And so what you can do is you can use like caret and specify your own delimiter. And so that's basically what's happening here is we're using the colon as a specified delimiter. So basically, instead of using, we could essentially use a comma right here, but because we're using a comma down here for our ring group, we kind of want to give free switch something else to parse on channel variables. And so that's essentially what we're doing is we're saying, hey, use a colon to separate these two different channel variables.
Right, and it makes it much more readable and easier to understand as well.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you lose track of all the brackets, right?
Yeah. And so he said he was using user /1000. Well, what 1000 will do is basically translate into lower level dial strings that FreeSwitch can actually dial. And you can check those out yourself. If you're on the command line, just do Verto_contact 1000, and that should actually spit out the dial string that you should see. If you go, Verto contact 1000, you see error user not registered. Well, you might want to go into your Verto settings on the web page and check it and make sure you actually are using the right user, because oftentimes, people get to the Verto web page and they don't know to go click on the settings and change 1008, which is the default user, to like 1000. Which is probably could be another problem that he was running into.
Right, and so that sheet as a whole, I mean, that's great. There's so much information there. It's really impressive. And so, if somebody wanted to find out more about this type of stuff, where should they go? Could they? That's like a page from the training, right?
That is a page from the training. So if you want to see more color-coded training slides like that, definitely send an email to training@freeswitch.com, or you can actually go to the freeswitch.com modules page and check out the commercial offering there for training. So
cool. Okay, so today we have thank you, Josh. Information from the experts. Best place to get it. Today we have Gavin Henry from SureVoIP, and he has a presentation for us, as well as we're going to learn a little bit about his company. So, Gavin, what do you got?
Hi, Michael. Thank you for the invite, and
Thank you for coming in today. We always appreciate having new guests. So,
I've been asked a few times, but the time's never quite worked out. But today seems to be good, so that's good. And happy 4th of July to everyone. Independence Day.
yes, yes.
Seem to be working, but hey.
Didn't work out too well for you guys, though, right?
No. Um,
Bad joke. Sorry.
yeah. So I think the plan is a small presentation and then some questions and answers. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, here's my slides that you asked very nicely for me to prepare. So a bit about me. My name's Gavin Henry. I'm 40 just this year, so big life change, I suppose. I have one son called Ben. I've been in full-time business since 2005, and that was as an open source sort of consultant, contributor to the Open LDAP project. And then around 2009, 2008, we looked at what we were doing and diversified. But I like to think of myself as a software engineer. Maybe I'm not quite good enough, but that's what I like doing. So there's the next slide. So at the core of SureVoIP, we do hosted VoIP. So your handsets live on your desk or your smartphone and stuff's in the cloud. So our network. We provide SIP trunks, SIP DDIs. So around 60 odd countries around the world, we can give you a number and then our own numbers in the UK. You can port in and out. For select customers, we also take on board the usual scenario where someone's downloaded FreeSwitch or Asterisk or something for free and they've knocked up a dial plan or something like that, and then that person's left. And the typical support scenario would be we'd be asked to take it over, and then we'd sort of wipe it, reinstall it, migrate it, and then put on our monitoring and get it all sorted out. But that's for sort of select customers. Because we run our own network, we also do broadband, which brings the VoIP traffic straight into our network. So that's a great add-on. And we also sell hardware. We support drop ship it, and then it boots up and downloads its settings as you expect to keep the support requirements small.
So let me ask you a question. So a DDI, that's essentially the same as a DDI, DID.
Yeah, direct. That's the UK name, DDI. American is DID, I think. So yeah, just a number pointed at an IP address or a hosted PBX or our hosted offering. Just to give you some flexibility to use the internet to take the calls, you know.
Cool.
Okay.
So what type of hosted VoIP do you do? Is it, what type of features are offered through the hosted VoIP?
Well, it's FreeSwitch underneath with an open source GUI on top. We integrate with the PBX's API and do some stuff directly to our database cluster. So out of the box features, call center facilities, call recording, ring groups, IVRs, conferencing, all of your sort of bog standard business features. I'll come on to some other things we're doing that will make that a bit more special and unique. But basically,
well, that's a great feature set. That's very hard to provide at scale.
yeah, I mean, being in this game for a while now, it's very easy just to provision a PBX somewhere and then you become an ITSP, but actually keeping it up and running and secure and stable and testing it with, the latest Chinese handset or whatever, it's like cost $10 is really, really hard, and people forget that. It's like when you think, oh, I'll start a business. 80% of that business is running a business, and 20% is doing what you're selling. It's just things you learn as you get older and you're in it a bit longer, that sometimes the quickest, easiest thing is not the best, and having that stability for business customers is what you should strive for. But sometimes you learn that the hard way.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
so yeah, we like to stick to core features that we test and work with the customer to help design the system, because they might not really want what they're asking for, all the normal sort of complex sales stuff, right down to the single user that just wants, an extension in the cloud with voicemail to email, just to use the internet. So we could do a lot more and we could maybe do a bit less, but I think it's a good balance, and we've been in the game for almost 9 years now, so we've weathered the storms of startups. So yeah. Next slide.
What's funny is
So
I had someone say to me one time, and I think when the person said it to me, I said I took it completely the wrong way. But now I understand exactly what they were talking about. And so essentially they said, well, here today, gone tomorrow, right? And
yeah,
so, the long term, and it's very hard to run products for a very long period of time and have that, stability and uptime and all that stuff. I mean, it's one of the challenging things that's out there for most VoIP providers. But I can't tell you how many times there are, like, you see these come, they come, and then the next 6 months down the road, they're just completely gone.
yeah. I mean, if I had spoke to myself back in 2010 when I did this, I wouldn't have really changed anything. But when you actually get into the operations of a network, regardless of what service is on it, it really comes down to how much you invest in the equipment and the suppliers, and their ethics and how they operate. You can do so much really, really cheaply, but it's that rule of three, you can only get two of cheap, fast, and reliable, and you need to pick two of those. So fast and reliable is not cheap, and that's how we do it. But long term, I like the saying where important things are not urgent, and urgent things are never important. I can't remember. It was a rough quote like that, but your long-term things are important, but they don't need to be done tomorrow. And something that someone's screaming for right now is probably just because they're having a bad day, and you're getting the rough end of the stick. So yeah, it's difficult to keep things going, and all of the peers in the industry, and all these different conferences and events. Much respect to everyone, being where they are. It is hard, and you've got to do it well. Yeah.
So you guys have built so you've built entirely your own network.
Yeah. So getting on to the next slide, I got help. I had a design in my head. The sort of history, which I'll touch on after this, is I was reselling. So yeah, let's just start here. This is the network today. We're in 2 different locations. We have at least 2 of everything in each location. We have 2 separate links from 2 separate companies to each location. We have different tier 1 providers in each location. We're connected to every UK peering exchange that there is. We're physically connected to the BT SS7 network in 2 locations. And this all comes back to when I mentioned my son Ben, who's disabled at the beginning. I don't want to get woken up in the middle of the night, and I want fast and reliable out of those 3 things: cheap, reliable, and fast. And that just brings the type of customers that we want, and the type of businesses see this and understand it. So it's been quite a journey to get here. Quite a lot of money, but you've got to hold yourself accountable for these things, and strive for the best that you can. This isn't the cheapest way to do things by any means, but it's the least hassle, and that's well worth it. in my book and for my customers. But we weren't always like this. We started off with just 2 Dell servers up in the same data center we're in Edinburgh for £600 each. I put them in, got permission from my customers to move over, and they were sort of in it with me. And then we landed a sort of fairly big oil company that was a good 4 figures a month, and then I knew it was getting serious. So then we looked at another location, started renting equipment, and then certain things were happening in the network that we didn't have control, and I started getting some help to look at how to do your own network, because as far as I've ever been concerned, a server just lives somewhere and you logged in over SSH, and fixed it or set it up. But it was actually an American book I came across on a Radio 4 podcast or something called Tubes, about how the internet works, and it was just I found it when I was on holiday, I think, in 2012, and it explains how the core of the internet works. And it was an American technical journalist that had a squirrel chew through his fiber optic broadband in the States, and he wanted to follow the fiber and then sort of document how the internet worked, and he traced it back to his ISP in the data center, and then he ended up going all to the sort of 12 core internet pops of the world in New York and London and Amsterdam and Frankfurt. He went to see Facebook and got into their data centers and Google, and it basically mapped out how you get connected to the core of the internet at the tier 1 level, where the peering exchanges were, and it was like my blueprint recipe for who to speak to, And then I had this design in my head doing research, but because I had a customer base already, it was too much of a punt to try and just do it myself. So we got partnered up with a company that does like the BBC network and Talks and all these guys, and they whittled down a design that I could afford, and then we went from there. On my birthday in 2013, with a big glass of wine in my hand, I placed the biggest purchase order I've ever done. And then
it's funny because you remember it and you did it on your birthday, so that's
yeah.
great.
But I had to have a bit of wine first to push that send button. But yeah, it was the best thing I did. It took that was from June. The kit arrived in October that year. We took about 7 months to soak test it and get it all ready, and then we switched over on the 1st of March 2014. I never looked back. It's one of those things that you do in business and life where you think, what took us so long? But it's just having that freedom and independence now, and being able to make the decisions and not ask someone about it, apart from my wife. Everyone's got to ask their wife for permission. That's just how it works. But yeah, it's brilliant. So it takes me on to sort of how I got here. I'll speed through it because this was from another talk, so it's a bit. I kind of got into Linux when I was at university. Never heard of it. This was sort of 2001. I just instantly fell in love with the whole open source, free software type ethos. And it was actually at Halliburton in my 3rd year placement. I bought a bit of software because that's how software worked, but I transferred it to another computer and it stopped working. So I asked the IT manager, and he figured out it was something to do with the hard drives and gave me this Red Hat Linux 6 disk. So I was like, what's this? And then started subscribing to Linux Magazine and went back to uni, and I ended up getting a 2.2 in the end because I was too busy sort of dual booting all the PCs in the lab and just really enjoying all that stuff. But I got a job before I graduated as a electronics and communications engineer doing satellite comms, PBXs. And I just wanted to do the computers, so I met two other guys at the local geeky club. I was a total geek, and we decided to create, a consultancy business that did Linux for small business. And this is really before Firefox was out, or Open Office or anything, LibreOffice. That open source was well known at all. So for the next 2 years, I just kind of did anything we could, and then the company got bought out I'd built up enough customers with the three guys to go full time. And it sort of all kicked off when Ben was born. He was my only son. He was just a £2, 12, 3/4 when he was born, 3 months premature, and he was a year old when the company I worked for was bought out. So we decided to just go ahead. So I just had enough customers to pay my salary and 3 months' money in the bank from my granddad, just in case it didn't work out. But I was still, fresh out of university and a job, so it wasn't too much risk, I suppose. And then it all kicked off. 2004, I joined the Open LDAP project as a documentation contributor, and I actually got my openldap.org email address. 2007, I got a call from these guys, BP, the councils, all wanting LDAP consultancy for crazy day rates because it was before the credit crunch. And we just started doing LDAP deployments, But it was the traditional complex sale. So it took about 6 to 9 months to land it. I couldn't take day rates, and I wasn't sure what to do next. I was just building up cash in the bank. So in 2008 was the sort of turning point. I bought out the last director because of certain things that were happening, and I sort of reevaluated what I was doing. In 2006, I started selling VoIP. I just really loved and still do being able to just plug a phone into the network and make and receive a call. I just don't know what about that is brilliant. But making a call from your browser or transferring a call, it's just magic. Although you understand what it is, but it still feels like magic. So decided to do that. Bought the 2 servers in 2009, but I knew I wanted to move up the food chain and do it properly. So this is credit crunch time, 2009, and did all this stuff. Got numbers. From Ofcom, that took 3 months sending spreadsheets, direct debits, credit cards, BT wholesale, masses of contracts. I mean, like things you didn't even read properly because you're just not going to get the contract and the service, without signing it. So went ahead with that.
So how does that work?
In the UK,
yeah, when working with these big providers, is it like an arbitrage thing where you trade minutes and data, or is it like?
Well, most of the things you have to do is actually understand what you need to get all these things. I was reselling another VoIP company that I'm good friends with. So I knew what it looked like when you ordered a SIP trunk and you ordered a hosted handset, and then on SIP traces you could kind of work out who their suppliers with. But I didn't know how to get phone numbers, and how you actually apply for things and how you get the wholesale termination and that type of stuff. So it was a big learning curve, and at that time, Ofcom's a little bit better now, but you actually had to download spreadsheets that had area codes in it in the UK, 620 odd area codes. You looked up what block of numbers was free. You put them on your spreadsheet, and on that spreadsheet, you could only have 10 area codes with your best selection and your second best. And then you emailed them a spreadsheet with 10 area codes on. So we had to do, 65 odd spreadsheets with all these things on over 3 months, me and my wife, to apply for these numbers. Then on that application, you have to give them a network diagram of how they were going to work, how you were going to sell them, the business plan, what suppliers you had, so they knew that they weren't just giving valuable resources away. So then you get back a certificate, which is a PDF saying you are the range holder, and you give them to whoever is going to host them for you on the UK PSTN. They make them work, and they update all the databases in the UK to make them work with all the other suppliers. Then you get your credit checks of how you pay for it, whether it's prepaid, postpaid. Then you have to figure out the user journeys of how you want to sell the stuff to them and how they're going to pay. So it's a big ask, trading online like that, and especially them, because you had to really justify what you're doing. Now you can get a merchant account and a credit card quite easily, but straight out of the credit crunch, it was very hard. And that's basically how it goes from there. And then you move further up the food chain as you get more traffic. You have to give them a forecast, whether it's to prove to them whether it's worth their time, you know. But by and large, it's just all forecast at the beginning to say, we're going to bring on X amount of customers every month, and that'll equate to whatever their net profit margin is,
So when a call comes, because you mentioned you mentioned on your network topology map that you had two SS7 links.
Yeah, that's right.
So the numbering, you're doing the translation for the DDIs at the
Yeah, that's right.
SS7 links?
At the moment, our numbers live on a BT wholesale service until we fully complete the SS7 migration. So basically, a call comes in from a mobile phone or a landline. They'll hold a database of where to route that call onto, of who owns the number and what network interconnect it should be sent to. That'll then, so say you're with a UK mobile operator called O2, you'll dial a number, it'll come into them, they'll look it up, they know it's a landline and it's on BT's database. It'll send it to BT. BT will look up their system to say, actually, that's a SureTech Systems trading as SureVoIP number. We send that to that SPC, and that SPC has the profiles to come in. And that's on the IP sort of network. If it's SS7, it doesn't, when it leaves BT, it comes in through the SS7 network. And then because you're a range holder owner, there's a bit of outpayment depending on what type of number's been called, that you bill them for and they bill you for. It's pretty much.
So that's what I was talking. That's what I was talking about with the arbitrage and that type of stuff.
Yeah, so they're pretty. There's all that type of business out there of sneaking through calls to different types of numbers. So you've got to keep on top of all that and make sure customers are on the right profiles with the right monitoring and all that type of stuff.
So how does portability work in the UK?
So depending on where your numbers live, whether they're on SS7 or hosted through a third party, it's gaining provider led. So say I'm your telco, you come to us saying you want a hosted VoIP system, but your number's with Vonage or Ring Central or one of these other guys. We would then use our wholesale account to see if they have a porting agreement with them. If so, then we would utilize that, submit it to them, and it would sort of come through that way. If they're not with one of our major providers, we would then approach them directly to say, would you be willing to do a SIP interconnect? Here's the contract and the commercial terms. And once that process kicks in, it all becomes confidential and there's regulatory procedures to follow, and sort of industry agreed timelines of when that should all happen. But that's just for the first number if you don't have an agreement with them, and then the next time it's pretty seamless. But it's a very manual step, even with some of the portal-based systems and automated systems, it's still physically a form gets signed to give the losing party permission to move the number. It's nothing like the mobile world where you just get a code and move on. There's a lot of work going on at the moment with all the different industry standard bodies like the Internet Telephony Service Provider Association to try and have like a central database where everything's looked up and it's found.
Yeah, so some of the providers in the US are now starting to institute PIN systems, and it just makes porting just so easy.
It's just so historic, everything, and these companies are just billion pound companies, and they just do it how they want to do it unless Ofcom comes in and makes it a bit easier. And that's just how the telecoms work, and it's driven by the gaining provider. So if the gaining provider can't be bothered to do what they're supposed to do for that one customer, they're within their rights to just walk away. So with sometimes the losing party gets a lot of blame for not releasing the number. But if the gaining provider, i.e. your provider that's giving you a service that you're moving on to, can't be bothered, there's nothing a losing provider can do. So there's a lot of bad blood that can happen. But in general,
we see that. We see that in the U.S. as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you've not got good business ethics or integrity as a business owner or an operations porting director, team lead, you just wait till you get into trouble, and you see that a lot. Or if it's not an easy number port, it just depends how much you want the business. So yeah, there's a lot of improvements going on. So I listen into the porting calls, and it just needs a lot of people to work together to hopefully create this central database so you can see, because even when you have got a porting agreement, there can be so much history around a number. If it's an old number, it could have been allocated to Ofcom. It could have been allocated to Virgin Media or BT by Ofcom 20 years ago or 15 years ago, but it's changed hands so many times. So you have to try and find that history, because if it's not correct on the submission, it can just get rejected and rejected. And then you have to get a letter of authority from the customer to ask things on their behalf. And then it's just how much you want to persist to get that information. And it usually takes a phone call to someone clueful and say, look, here's the details we've got. Can you just validate it? And a lot of porting teams are outsourced abroad, and there's a whole other set of barriers you've got to get in, and they change teams a lot, and they don't really know the process. It used to be you'd know a few names of the right people to speak to in the different companies, and you'd get it done quickly. But now when it changes or it's outsourced, it's silly things happen, and you can do this as a managed service, but when these are your assets,
there's an art to porting, that's for sure.
Yeah.
There is definitely an art to porting, and it's something that is so integral to the success of a business, because in the end, it's how quickly you can onboard customers and transition.
Yeah, and what a lot of people forget in the UK, I think it's the same in the US. Just because you've moved companies, that original number range holder that takes the call still takes the call and then forwards it on either through SS7 or IP to the new provider. So if you've moved because you've got a bad service, say for example they're running an over-contended network, or they just don't really care, they want to make as much as they can with their limited capacity, that call still goes through them, And a lot of people think that when they move their number, it's with that new company completely. So if the old company has an outage or goes out of business, you're in trouble.
And so what's the authoritative that does that? It's like Open World or something?
OpenReach manage all the number resources and broadband and TV licenses, all that type of stuff in the UK. OpenReach manage the UK's broadband, sort of copper wire, fiber infrastructure. They will dig cables and run things for you. Then you've got the other providers like SSE and Virgin and TalkTalk and other guys that will actually either dig their own ducts and pipes in the ground or rent space from OpenReach and run their own fiber. But by and large, it's OpenReach that has the best sort of duct and telegraph capacity around the UK. And they have a legal obligation to deliver broadband and services to a certain standard throughout the UK, but that's quite low. So you'll have a lot of places in the Scottish Highlands or in the countryside that just get like 2 meg broadband, and it's not good enough to watch Netflix or do VoIP or anything like that. It's sub 1 meg per second. So then you get 4G broadband or satellite services. So it's a competitive market and quite a mess. But you need to know, to get these relationships, these guys is quite hard. To get our account with OpenReach took, I think about 2 years in the end for pushing, because you have to get through the door correctly and have the right forecasts and technical knowledge, and they're just massive beasts to deal with, And then someone goes on holiday, and you're not speaking to the same guy or the same woman, and I think that's how it'll always be. It's probably the same in the US and a lot of places in Europe as well.
Yeah. So we have there's basically I don't know if I would call it a federal authority, but essentially the numbering and portability is all handled by one organization, which isn't it's a government issued contract, and I think that contract last year was like a $500 million
Okay.
in order to do the number portability data. So yeah, it's really cool. It's always nice to learn about how things operate in different countries. It's always of great interest to me. So
Yeah. So I can just skip through these last slides very quickly, if that's right, Michael.
sure,
Yeah,
absolutely.
we went fully independent on March the 1st, which was very nerve-wracking, but it was all tested and good. And then it just grew from there, because we were a network operator, we got into different doors opened. We got into oil companies, TV channels, hotel chains. We've got over 1,000 business customers. Some customers we do, 3,000 numbers for, with oil rigs all around the world. And you wouldn't get into these places if you couldn't demonstrate you knew what you were doing and could touch everything, equipment wise. 2016 we won Best Business ITSP for Medium Enterprise. I was not expecting that when I went down to London for it. In that year we grew around 65% as well, which was amazing. The oil sector up here has taken quite a hit, so that's had a sort of net effect on some of the call charges that we do, because they're all international, but our subscription base has been growing nicely. When these guys are making 5-figure amount of call revenue per month, you can see the difference when they're not doing big projects. It's all good. It just allows us to focus and do different things. See, that sort of ties me up with the history. So you can close that share now. That works. Where do I do that? You can change it. That's cool. But yeah, so it's been a really exciting journey from buying 2 servers to actually, running a network. And I've not borrowed any money. This has just been earn, put back in, earn, put back in. The shares that I issued was, 10 shares for £1 each. So I think it would be different if I came in it and it was, a couple £100,000 to invest to get things going. But I guess
there's no other industry in the world. There's just something so special about voice over IP.
I think
really,
it's actually the internet as well. Once you get to that level, like you see at your business, and everyone else that's connected to the core of the internet, it's just so invigorating, and you just don't know how it all works. And the more you understand and you see outages and issues, you're like, yeah, I totally get why that that happens, because sometimes it's a miracle that BGP works, and you've got thousands of networks interconnected, yet a customer calls up and says my phone doesn't work, or I can't stream this, and they have no idea how it works.
I heard one recently. I couldn't believe it. This customer called in, and one of the support people was talking to him, and so it turned out that after 15 minutes of talking, it was the handset was broken.
Okay.
It's like you have to go through all those questions and answers, but like for me, I in a million years I would have never figured that out. You know what I mean? Because I just look at it from the engineering perspective, and you have to have that. You have to have that personality there to like, to extrapolate all the really important ideals. Because in the end user really doesn't know how any of this stuff
Yeah.
works.
And the
Like
whole point is
my
that they shouldn't
phone's
know,
not
should they?
working, right?
Yeah.
And then it's like, and then, well, how do you prove it to them? Well, you answer it on speakerphone, and then just say your headset's broken. Obviously someone in the office smashed it one too many times.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there's loads of stories, but um, just shocking some of the stuff people do. But if you put their hat on and it was some medical thing or something, you'd be exactly the same. You don't want to have to learn it because that's the whole point. But sometimes with a little common sense pixie dust was sprinkled over the problem, it might just work itself out. Um, but they
So
don't
tell
want
me
to.
about, you guys have done some really interesting work with SMS, right?
Um, yeah, we're moving on to sort of the MVNO mobile type of stuff we're looking at. At the moment, we've got a lot of things going on that we're constantly trying to improve. So for the past sort of 5 years, I've tried to find a billing system that I really want. Been putting out tenders to different commercial guys. Found a great open source one that has sort of opened the doors for other services. We've had our training and we're getting some stuff sponsored, and it's just all real time, breadth forward controls. We can
Yeah,
bundle up anything we
real
want.
time billing is one of the most important things.
Yeah, and some of these
That's the only way to
services and
really.
growing to the next level, we just can't not have that real time shutting people down, and any type of monitoring you want to do is all built in here. And then I understand machine learning is coming in, so we can build profiles of when calls should be happening, and just all the stuff that you study and just dream about. So that's allowed us to do other things because it freed some of the burden of some of the operational things we've got at the moment. And that brings us on to doing SureVoIP mobile. So actually getting our own SIM cards.
That's so
And
cool.
yeah, I never understood how complicated it was though. You think you pick up your mobile phone and dial a number, but when you actually get on the other side of it and you see the wholesale billing, and there's about 5 different parts of that phone call, depending on how the phone call's done, what network you're on, what country you're in, you're like, whoa, I need a proper billing system that can speak diameter and do all this proper stuff because it is complicated. So this new system we've got allows us to do all that. We can pop a SIM in, and some of the product stages will be able to record that call. We can see your location updates in real time, and you imagine a Google Maps to show where your sales team are. You can bridge call listening to it. We can take all the key presses and then call the internal extensions. Just loads of clever stuff we can do further down the line. But the best thing for me is that number porting works, and the SIM card works on the major networks in the UK. So when I've been looking at this type of thing, and I've watched some of my peers invest a lot of money and fail and just not get it right, mainly because of the bureaucracy around it and the amount of money involved. The problems have always been, can I port the number? How much does it cost for that leg of the call from the SIM card to your PBX? Is that going to kill the offering? How competitive is the data, and what network it is on? And this one that we've selected to use works on the O2, Vodafone, and E in the UK. So that in itself is a massive USP. You don't need to worry about where you are. As long as there's a mast and a signal, our servers will find it. It's not going to be the cheapest in the world. It's never going to compete directly with the big guys with data bundles and that type of stuff. But for the guys that want a system and call
But the
quality that
difference
will
is
always
you can
work.
you're in the call flow. And so like a lot of
Yeah.
those being in the call flow is really what makes it special, right?
Yeah, we
Because
signed
and
up
it
a
makes it
partner today.
non-competitive
Went
too.
live. It's not going to be fully live because we're waiting for our SIM cards to arrive. We got a small batch in yesterday, so we put on 2 partners yesterday, just with a couple of tens of SIMs, and they just love the fact that you can switch the SIM card off. You can switch the data off. If their customers don't pay, they just do it. If they want to block certain countries, it's done, and just the sort of stuff you wouldn't get access to, and they don't need to worry about the network. It just flicks between the networks whenever it finds it. And I know from watching other companies try and do that, I've virtual enabler, so we can look at things later on
Well, a
and
lot of
move up the
that's
food
because
chain.
some new regulations came through too. So now
Yeah,
in the EU, because of the new roaming laws, I remember like even just last year, because I travel quite a bit. I had a Vodafone's Netherlands card, and then I and
yeah,
then I was in Berlin, and all of a sudden, boom, your data is like gone.
yeah.
Right? Because all of a sudden, through the roaming agreement, they're billing out at huge multipliers of what the original contract was. And
Well, there's
so I guess
massive, there's
now the
massive.
law prohibits stuff like that, right?
Yeah, it's changed. So it used to get capped, so you'd only get billed a certain amount. Um, but now it just defaults to. Well, it depends on the network. They all have their different ways to do it now. But it used to be sort of the Wild West. They could just charge what they want, but it's been sorted out. Um, but yeah, so I'm really excited about this because it's a new market for us. It's a massive learning curve, but we've got the right team supporting us. It just gets us into other markets where, with this new billing platform system, whatever you want to call it, we can give a person an account, and then their minutes and their prices is all spread across all the services. So it's not like you have so many minutes for your mobile and so many minutes for your desktop. It's just nice and simple. So I'm really excited um, of finding that product. Um, so yeah,
It's
that's
impressive. It's impressive. So how many other VoIP providers actually have mobile? Are you the only one?
um, some of the sort of PBX integration features. There's a few providers out there. So for the average person, that's all new when they see it from us. But for the savvy, the technical person, some of this isn't new. Um, but the level that we've integrated at, we have so much more control. And the fact it's not tied to one network, that's usually the killer. So usually the massive barriers to entry is that you don't get that carrier in that area that you work in. It's poor. Um, and the number porting just doesn't work. Or they want it when they go abroad, and because it's roaming from the UK, it's not a good service. Whereas ours is a sort of global SIM, so you'll get brilliant service wherever you are in the world. And because we get wholesale rates, we can compete really well for like the oil sector. All companies that we have as customers really get ripped off when they go into the countries they operate in. But we have some really, really exciting packages and way we can spin things for them, and then tie it in. So, I mean, this week, PricewaterhouseCoopers announced that they're just moving to mobile. So that's the sort of thing that's coming, that these massive companies are all switching to mobile. And so these type of services where they get excellent coverage and roaming globally for a reasonable price, and it's reliable. It's no longer about a race to the bottom for the cheapest data or the cheapest call. It's all about reliability
Yeah, people
and
want
um,
quality and
and
reliability, that's
quality.
for sure.
Yeah. So it's a good time for us. As usual, it takes me a bit longer because of family and just how complicated things are, but it's all moving forward nicely. In fact, we've got a lot of things going on at the moment. The billing system, mobile. I'm exploring Android and Apple iOS apps. Um, a lot of work's going into the portal and sort of single page app stuff, um, just to help move to the next level. We're doing some clever stuff with PCI compliant call recording. Microsoft are doing something new with MS Teams, so we can try and integrate with that product and break into the PSTN on Office 365 and things. It used to be you had to deploy a massive Microsoft infrastructure, but now you can just buy a magic black box from Ribbon or Audio Code and branch in per channel. So that'll be a good model for some of the oil companies and public sector. because then we can bridge our mobile service into them. What else have we got? The usual ISP type things, constant looking at kits and capacities and upgrading things and migrating, and we're halfway through getting onto containers, looking for new staff as always. Just a fantastic year of moving forward. And yourself, when you look back at the past 6 months, you think, how have you managed to do all that, and still come out of it sane? It's just moves so quickly. But
well,
if you don't do that,
it causes a little bit of insanity, that's for sure.
Yeah. And then you think you're all okay, and then you see someone's press release, or you go and watch a presentation on ClueCon, and you go, "Oh my God, we've got so much to do." But you learn that every company's like that. So.
All right. Well, thank you for coming in today, and more importantly, thank you for sponsoring ClueCon.
Yeah, even though I can't go, I like to contribute back, whether that's through a support contract or, community contributions, but just putting some money towards, because they're core to our business. I think everyone that uses open source should put their money where their mouth is.
Absolutely. And it's funny. I have so much respect for all the people that contribute back, right? Yeah. And it really is. It's at the very core of open source, because without the sponsorship and without, people contribute in all different ways and forms.
Yeah.
Like either they contribute time, they can contribute financially, they can contribute code. There's so many different things that can be done. But
nothing. You lose. Good day, sir.
That's the end.
Yep. All right. So thank you for coming in today.
Thanks very much.
Yep.
Anytime, and I hope ClueCon goes really well.
Yes. Josh, back to you.
You're muted, Josh.
Let's see here. All right. I think that should do it there. All right. Excellent. All right, thank you, Mike. Thank you, Gavin, for coming in. We appreciate you sharing your experience there. Having built your own company from scratch, that's definitely quite the feat to have accomplished in one's life. And again, to the audience, happy 4th of July. Definitely enjoy your time off there. And again, bear in mind, we do have the ClueCon 2017. ClueCon July 23rd to July 26th this year. So be sure to get registered. And with that, we will go ahead and bring the episode to a close.
You've been watching ClueCon Weekly. Tune in every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Central. Keep up with the latest happenings by subscribing to our YouTube channel, follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or visit us at freeswitch.com.